was a lot of information. How you guys feeling? Good? Okay, cool. We're going to actually go into that was what it looked like, the industry looks like on paper, right? But the truth is it's made up of people, and a lot of the people that are on this panel, have been navigating through trying to get into compliant, trying to get their businesses compliant over the past few years. So some people are brand new and just got their permits in, and other ones have been advocating since before legalization happened, trying to help to navigate the landscape. So we have millions of dollars worth of consulting over here. I'm really grateful that people came and are dedicating some of their time this morning to be able to talk to all of us. I'm just going to go all the way down the line and have people introduce. Okay, first actually here. So next to me we have Morris. Morris is from SF Roots. It is a cannabis brand. And then we'll give everybody a chance to introduce themselves to you. So and then we have Carlton Williams from New Life, which does cultivation and retail and distribution. Yeah. Micro business, right. And then we have Felipe from Rise, but he's also on the California Distributors Association. So if you have I was like, direct all your questions for distribution to him. He's the resource. Just kidding. Let's see. And then we have Amber Center, who helped to found Supernova with me, and also is in manufacturing, has retail licensing, retail applications in, and also manufacturing. And so she's been, and distro too. So all the way down the supply chain. There you go. And then we have Jennifer Johns from Oakland. Like, thank you. Manufacturing, distribution, and delivery, correct? Awesome. And then we have Adolf, also from Oakland. He has delivery, distribution. What else you got? I know you got this. Okay, awesome. And also, just delivery now, but also runs meetings in Oakland to give industry updates as well, so he's a great person to tap in with. And then we have Michelle from Cannabox, who's also micro business, right? And she did a lot of work to help to open up Brisbane also. So as far as like being able to talk to somebody that's done work in cities to help open up spaces, she's a great person to talk to also. I'm gonna go down the line, and the first question is, what inspired you to get into cannabis?
Hi, my name is Morris, and what inspired me to get into cannabis? Truthfully, I was just a kid growing up in San Francisco that loved pot. And growing up in a scene that's heavily, that had a heavy cannabis influence. Naturally, when I came of age, the first thing I did was to look and to see how I could get into this industry. And when it was 215, it was a lot easier. You really just had to file the right paperwork, and you were in the industry, or you were in the community. And once I found out I was able to do that, that's what I did, and I never looked back. So that's kind of what inspired me to get in the cannabis community, is that I loved marijuana, and I was from a city that allowed me to be a part of that business.
What inspired me to get into cannabis? I kind of grew up around drugs my whole life. My mother was a drug addict. My father, he was in and out of prison for drug charges. Just kind of my lifestyle growing up, drugs was always a go-to if you needed to hustle, whether it was selling crack, weed, or whatever. So that's just always been part of the nature and culture of my family. Well before it was legal. When I was a kid, I grew up around drugs, seeing the doobie in the ashtray, or somebody cooking dope on the stove, or whatever the case may be. So like drugs has just been a part of kind of been a part of me my whole life. So, you know, after I think it was 2013, I seen a guy, one of my boys ordered some flour on Weed Maps, and a guy pulled up, and I was like, damn, you doing this legally? And he said, yeah. I said, well, how do I get into it? He said, oh, you can buy into my franchise. So at the time, I had a 67 Cougar. I sold it to give him the money to buy into this franchise. Yeah. So then later on, I found out you couldn't really franchise, you know, that I was getting ripped off. And you know, I went and got went down to look, you know, went and did some research and found a class at a school over there called Oaksterdam. It was a online course that showed you how to start your own collective. So, you know, I went in, went through the course. It was $150 online. Followed the course, started New Life Medical Collective in 2013, and operated as a delivery driver under the collective model. So, you know, that's pretty much, it's been a lifelong thing for me. So.
I got into cannabis mostly because of curiosity, and my DNA have always for whatever reason, I never wanted to follow rules and to be told what to do. Really, it was I was a super nerd growing up. I grew up on the Mexican border. My mother's from Colombia. I mean, there's a lot of things that drove me, but the reality was it was necessity that got me into cannabis. It was a beautiful woman that was really brilliant, and I wanted to understand why she used cannabis, and then eventually getting my liver tested for anticonvulsants and realizing that if I ate cannabis every day, I wouldn't have to do that anymore, and I could just eat cannabis. So very passionate about this, and it's been 19 years, 20 in July. Love it.
My name is Amber. I grew up in Chicago. I was always kind of a sickly kid. I suffered from a lot of different things that the doctors couldn't really figure out until October of 2013. I was diagnosed with lupus and Lyme disease and a couple other autoimmune chronic illnesses. And I was living in Chicago at the time. But actually, when I was 18, I started smoking weed. And I noticed that a lot of the symptoms that I was dealing with kind of went away. And so when I was diagnosed several years later, when I was 31, or 33 actually, in 2013, I was living in Chicago, like I mentioned, and it was really cold there. And I was presented with an opportunity to move here to California to get into the industry working for an edibles maker that was my friend in Oakland. And I took him up on that opportunity, and I knew I needed to move from Chicago anyway. It was too cold, and I'm really hypersensitive to the cold. And so when I moved here, I got on a medical cannabis regiment. I mean, I was smoking weed every day for a really long time, but my system was so out of whack, and I was having so many issues that I needed much more than just smoking it. Like I needed tinctures, I needed topicals, I needed full extract cannabis oil. I needed like a real cannabis regiment. So when I moved here, I was able to get into the industry working for someone, but I was also able to stabilize my health. So cannabis has always been very near and dear to me since the first time I tried it, because of how I noticed the effects that it had on me immediately. And then when I got extremely ill, it was able to bring me back to being in a place where I can now function and work and participate in society. So that's what really inspired me to get into cannabis. Was I discovered the magic of this plant. Not only was I so really like drawn to it by the look, the smell, the how it grows, the roots, everything about it, the fuzziness of the roots, the beautiful fuzziness of the pistils and the trikes and the plant, but then how it makes me feel and how it makes other people feel. It's just a magical plant. So I was really just drawn to to it, and how can I get this to everyone else so that other people don't suffer because it's unnecessary, because this plant is amazing. So yeah.
I got into cannabis because there are more black men in prison right now than there were at the height of the slave trade. So, yeah, that's the main reason. I'm a singer, and musicians don't make money on music. We make money on merchandising. So that's the byproduct, that's the benefit. But long money, my intention is to be able to create as many jobs and longer money, as many ownership opportunities as possible, because I come from an activist background. I'm from Oakland, and enough of my friends are doing the work to make sure that we open every cell in Attica and send them to Africa, right? And so they have that part under control. I want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to have ownership in an industry that they help to create.
My name is Adolph. I got into cannabis because I'm from Oakland. I grew. I grew up in the '80s, part of the failed war on drugs, and so ultimately, being a reformed cannabis dealer myself from the '90s, once I actually saw that the tides were changing and legalization was coming, and that there was a movement on the ground level in Oakland to actually ensure that whoever wanted to be included could be, I decided to kind of dedicate whatever time and effort and resources I could. I noticed I found out really quickly that there was a void of people who looked like me participating in that actual process, and so I was able to kind of step into really what was a void, and I just kind of did that open-heartedly. Once all the smoke settled and these equity programs were kind of established, I decided why not capitalize, because again, there's a void of people who look like me who actually participate, and so kind of dedicated like the last 4 years of my life to ensuring that these programs exist, ensuring that I can help anyone that I can, whether it's just guidance or mentorship or opening up my supply chains to them, to ensure that this industry doesn't look like what it's looked like in the past. You know, a lot of well-to-do individuals who are generally male, generally Caucasian, have very large balance sheets or investment portfolios, and that's just not what this is about. And so ultimately, it's just basically I believe that inclusion is for whoever decides they want to be included and they have the resources and know-how to do that. And so that's it. And then all the things that the individuals on the panel have said, especially what Amber has said, I love the plant, right? And so that's it.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of follow because so many of the things that you guys said I feel so closely with. I grew up, born and raised San Francisco. I was a plant enthusiast at a very young age. Really, like Amber said, enjoyed every aspect of it. Didn't quite understand it. I went to school and I married my husband at a very young age, and we had 2 kids. So I kind of stopped smoking for a bit. And I realized my first business was to help kids who learn differently. And when I was doing that, there was a lot of big push for legalization. And this was even slightly before. And I went to a dispensary, and I saw how difficult it was for people to make decisions and what they were buying. So I started a company that would help brands kind of tell their stories and really explain who they are and why they're such a great product, not just kind of the marketing out there, and then give people the chance to really try these products, form a relationship with them, because cannabis, it's not just about smoking. It really is a lifestyle. And you can just smoke and enjoy it. There's both sides of it. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So I really got in to try to help people in this industry, and really change the way business is done in general. For me, this is a really kind of important one. A lot of the work I started to do was because of brands who fought for this and couldn't get licensed. So for me, that was a really big issue because those were the brands I wanted to put in my box. So, repeat the question again. Oh, from a social, for social equity. I think it's really important that we don't just give an opportunity. We even the playing field, and we really create something where anyone who wants to do it can do it. This is not an easy industry. Everyone should have an opportunity to be in it, because once you're there, it is so much work. And we need everyone that wants to be there to be there. So making sure that everyone can have a chance to get into this industry as much as possible.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Social equity.
When you heard about the Cannabis Equity Program, programming rolling out, what opportunities did you see, and now what are you hoping for now that you're navigating the process?
I guess I'm coming from a unique perspective as opposed to a couple of other of you up here. Initially, I guess I was one of the participants in actually drafting the first social equity program in Oakland. And so the three of us on this panel, we kind of helped craft what it actually is. And so there was good and bad. Ultimately, what we got in Oakland was a lot of compromise. And so one word comes to mind of what I hope to achieve from that program. It was inclusion. It was inclusion of whoever decided they wanted to actually participate. That being said, what I'm hoping to get from the program now is also reality. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you can or you should. And so we also need, folks to be realistic and say that it's not going to be for everyone, because it's not it's much more complex than the average person would think. And so ultimately, it's just all about inclusion.
Desley Brooks called me while I was living in Africa and told me that I was going to go after every license every way I could. And so that's, I didn't quite understand what was going on. I wasn't even in the States at the time. But when I read about what she was doing and what the community was doing to make it possible, it felt like the most important thing that I could do alongside my music. And so what I'm hoping for is similar to what you're saying, is as I get into it, I understand that it's not simple. And I'm really sad for the homies who really understood the supply chain as it existed, and then now taking those same homies and making them business people when you're used to being a pot dealer it's fucked up. It just, to me, I mean, it just sucks, because it's like it's a completely different set of skills. And so I'm hoping that as we grow this industry and people who look like us grow this industry, that we don't assume the position of corporate oppressive spaces, right? Like, it's very easy to do what you know. That's just like a way of being for humans, right? So then you get yourself in a position of power, and it's not about reaching back so much, but having some compassion and understanding that the soft skills are not going to be there, right? Like, some of those skills are just not there. Some folks are really intimidated by having to show up to a city office of any kind, because our experience being in those places have been so traumatizing. And so I'm really hoping that as we move forward, that we take the responsibility of helping to bring our community along without being condescending and being very compassionate. I think that's really important.
So I met Nina on Valentine's Day 2015 at a VIP party for ICBC here in the city. And she talked to me because I had this big nug of purple kush in my pocket that I pulled out and started to grind up. And I did that because at this VIP party, nobody was there smoking weed. And I was like, what kind of weed party is this? no one's smoking weed, and I thought that was really bizarre. So we started to talk about how there was nobody in the place that looked like us. We were the only brown people in there, and we thought that was problematic. So we became friends after that. And a few months down the road, I met Sunshine Lencho, who's the other co-founder of Supernova. And we met at a Women Grow event when I was looking for writers for a consulting firm that I was working for, and she was looking for a job. I actually got her a job the next day. But then we became friends. And so Sunny and I were writing applications for groups that were going after licensing in Maryland. And we were writing 22 applications, and they were all for white people. And we were like, whoa, you know, we started to talk about it and have some serious conversation like, hey, we're kind of helping to gentrify our own industry. Like, we're helping all these white people with our own knowledge. How can we teach our people what's happening, what's going on here, and how can we get them up to speed so that we can have more black and brown participation? So we formed, I threw a party here in the city. Nina and Sunshine came, and they met. All three of us met, and we started talking. And then we ended up having a meeting the next week, and we formed Supernova. And we formed Supernova with the primary goal of getting more black and brown participation in cannabis and creating owners in the industry. And so we started to advocate at the city, at Oakland, because Oakland was going through creating its cannabis ordinance as it is today, 5.8 and 5.81. And we were actually at the first, we were at the safety committee meeting where Desley Brooks announced the equity program. And so we started to work with the city of Oakland to develop this equity program. And really our whole idea behind it was that this industry has been built on the backs of black and brown people. My cousins, one of my cousins, such a smart kid, well, now he's a young man, but he was caught with less than a gram at school and was put into alternative school where then he dropped out, and then he had to go and get a GED. He had a lot of problems getting a job, like all of this just because he had like a minutia of cannabis found on him, on himself, and it wasn't even his, you know? So it's like, this has destroyed people's families, this has destroyed people's lives, and it's only right that these people are included, and not just as business owners, but as the community. So we have to give money, we have to create programs for the community so that people can participate. Not everybody is gonna be an owner. It's not easy being an owner. Like, don't nobody wanna deal with this kind of bullshit all the time. You know, like I deal with so much shit. People firing shots at me constantly. Nobody wants to be on the front like that. And some people just want a career. Some people just want to do good for their family and be able to provide. And we have to make sure that these systems are set up to benefit our communities, because right now they're not. Even just giving us this little piece of ownership, that's a great piece of the program. Where's the rest? Where's the rest of the program? Because that takes care of this many people. What about the 90% that is not trying to own a business in this fucked up industry? You know? So.
A couple different things that fair equity, I mean, it's really a heartfelt topic to me. I grew up on the Mexican border in Texas, in Brownsville, one of the lowest household income areas of America, and I very quickly found that having a white complexion, pero soy completamente colombiano y argentino, and that ability to arbitrage between classes was my opportunity. And so around 2012, you know, this I guess what really touches my heart is loyalty to all the people I've worked with over the years, all the people that have caught a lot of felonies and never spoken about me. We had handshakes and trust. But in 2012, I got pulled over in Illinois with some weed in the car, a lot of it. And when I got into the narcotics task force vehicle, I said, "Why did you pull me over?" And he said, "Because you're driving with a black man, so I know you have drugs in the car." And that moment right there, knowing that, at that point I hadn't touched cannabis in a long time and I was deeply involved, but at that moment when they illegally searched my car and I went to battle with them in court, and had I not been armed with attorneys and able to beat the case, there was an injustice there that really bugged me. And so as we transition into the future, looking back at all my friends that did time, that have felonies on their records because they never ratted on me, I'm loyal to that. And that's what fair equity means. It means to give people like me that I got lucky and I got through it felony free, but give all my team and all the people I care about the opportunity to go battle against what's coming into this.
So when I first heard about the equity program, I was sitting in my living room watching the news, and it popped up on the local news. It talked about Measure Z, this program that Desley Brooks put together, who was a council member of my district that I live in today. And I looked at the criteria. It said, you had to have a drug conviction or live in this area for 10 of the last 20 years. And I went down the list. I said, damn, I fit that criteria. So my next step was to go down to the city office to inquire. I went down to the city of Oakland, and they had a mixer. They had these cannabis commission meetings. I started to attend and show up, and then they put together a mixer where they were attempting to put generals and equity applicants together. And when I went into the mixer, I noticed it wasn't just that it wasn't that many people that looked like me. It wasn't that many people from my neighborhood. Just like my man down there, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I knew hella people who fit that criteria, and I didn't see anybody that I knew. And Oakland is it's grown, but it's still a tight-knit, small community. So I'm like, wait a minute, I don't see nobody in here that I know fits into this criteria. So I would take the information that I gathered from the city and just kind of hanging around, and I went back to the folks that I knew. So I went back to 80th and Holly. I went back to 109th and MacArthur. I went out, and I was part of an outreach program where we went out and actively found people who were currently standing on the corner in the black market and formed a group called the Green Huddle. And then here is where all of the information that, I would pick up, me and a guy named Ivy Williams, we would come back and relay this information, help with business proposals, help with the city permits and the state permits. And this almost turned into a kind of a consulting gig, but it was so organic. It wasn't nothing that I really planned. It was just out of the genuine concern of not seeing my people in the room. At that point, it wasn't nothing I got paid for. It wasn't nothing we charged for. It was just out of genuinely wanting to see our folks come into the industry and take advantage of this opportunity. Moving forward, and just to put a little bit of context to this, we talk about the effects of the war on drugs. It goes, for me, it's a lot deeper than getting caught with a dime bag in your pocket. Like I spoke of earlier, I grew up around it. So I used to play in a Royal Park as a kid. And when I played in the park, in the sandbox, it was needles. And we would dodge the needles as we were playing tag. And my older cousins would say, those needles have AIDS, watch out for them. So, as a kid, I didn't realize the effects that was having. I was just living life. And in that very same park, like I said, my mom, who was a drug addict, was found murdered by the creek. So that was kind of my experience in the drug industry. I mean, in this whole war on drugs and all of this sort of stuff that's going on. So, for me, I never really thought politically about it. I never really thought like industry-wise about it. It was just raw, just pure passion to want to see my people and people from my demographic elevate. So, you know, I guess moving forward, what I would like to see come out of it is I would like to see an equity program all around the world. I would like to see these sort of programs, you know, I'm not saying it's perfect, you know, but I would like to see as many success stories as we possibly can and highlight the successes of the program in Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, go to South Africa. I heard they legalized cannabis in Korea. Take the shit over to wherever there's poor people at and implement these sort of programs and highlight the successes of it so that it can continue to grow. So that's my hopes for the program.
Man, that's a hard panel to follow. Me, myself, personally, I've been in the cannabis industry since I was 18. I'm now 34 years old. And I've done almost every aspect of the cannabis industry, but in doing so, I've always had to have a certain type of partner for me to be able to get the things I need or to get the certain doors open that I needed open. With the realization of the equity program, it gave me the opportunity to actually be a standalone business owner with my background of drug activity in the city and just really never thinking that I would have that opportunity by myself to do the things that I know that I'm capable of doing. And that's what I saw within the equity program. And what I see coming out of the equity program is just a room full of people that I see here today that are striving to be entrepreneurs, that are striving to create generational wealth inside of their families. Because I think that is like the true key for survival of people of color is creating something that they can pass down to their kids that'll feed them, their family, and generations coming. And that's what I truly see it coming out of the equity program is providing a path for generational wealth of people of color.
You guys all have some very powerful, powerful stories, and I'm completely honored to have you guys here on this panel. We're gonna get into some more like just nitty-gritty stuff. So that was all the really fun and heartfelt like passion behind what brings you guys to the table. But as everyone came down the line, I heard it is complicated. It is not as easy as I thought it was gonna be, or as anybody had imagined. Like 215. Oh my God, we were in heaven. So like really like our former laws were absolutely amazing. California has 20 years of active industry. So that's something that we also have to remember is that California is not new to this, right? Like Washington came on, Colorado came on, all this other stuff, but we already had almost 2 decades of industry operational here. Like California provides the entire country with like 85% of its cannabis supply as it is, right? And that's aside from the work that we're all doing, right? So keeping in mind that we have a very deep history from where we are, there are so many different skill sets that are now needed to be able to acquire. So I'm gonna go back down the line. Let's tell the audience what it is that you really do, right? And then what hard skills as an owner you have to have and what soft skills that you've developed in order to still be here in the process. I know it's heavy. It's a lot. So the first, like, what is it that you really do?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. What is it I do? I problem solve. There's no problems, there's only solutions.
Tell us about your brand.
My brand is SF Roots. We are a cannabis lifestyle brand. We currently have prepackaged flowers and pre-rolls on the market, and we also have an apparel line.
And then, well, you said one of the soft skills that you have is like problem solving, so like hard skills and soft skills. So, like,
Hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are maneuverability, being able to pivot, not being locked into anything. Things are consistently changing. Time goes on, and I think there's been at least 4 different sets of regulations that we've had to change our packaging to going through this last year. And being a small business owner, that is an incredibly hard thing to be able to pivot through, not having a large budget and trying to plan forward to save your budget. So definitely being able to not stay locked in, keep your head on a swivel, and just paying attention to all the different moving parts of the industry that are going around you. Because one of the biggest things is that if you are focused only on manufacturing and because that's your lane, you're going to miss out on a lot of the opportunities of networking, of people outside of your lane can probably help you and help you problem solve and help you network. So definitely being able to network, I'd say putting your face in the place is like the biggest thing I've ever done. If you feel uncomfortable, it doesn't matter. Just go. Just be there, learn, ask questions, and yeah.
My company is New Life CA. We're pretty much a vertically integrated, have a vertically integrated business model. So I have cultivation facility, distribution, and non-storefront retail. Coming into it, I really didn't have a lot of business acumen. I more so picked up a lot of those things along the way. I knew how to hustle, which is, that's a good foundation. But when you start talking like using accounting systems like QuickBooks, or just being able to actually sit down and research law and all of those sort of things, when you don't have the budget, like the brother was saying, when you don't have the budget, you have to really sit down and do those things for you. One of the hardest skills, I'm working on all of them, but that really was really hard for me is, like he said, being in a room that I'm uncomfortable in, and stepping outside of myself and evaluating things from a emotional mind versus wise mind sort of perspective, especially being an equity, they want to put equity box. Have come from another equity applicant or had opportunities with larger companies, general applicants who, just from my background, I'm looking at them like, man, you trying to fuck me over? You think I'm stupid? Or so my rider would jump off the horse fast, and I'm flashing on them. I'm just in the room flashing like, nah, you trying to get over on me, and walking out on opportunity instead of pulling back and looking at things from more of a wise mind and saying, well, where the disagreement comes in places where the negotiation begins. So, that is one of the skills that, is really, I think is really crucial to develop for anybody like myself, is how do you get comfortable in those rooms that you're typically uncomfortable in, and how do you bridge the gap between, your culture and someone else's culture for the sake of business. I think that's just super important to develop, not just those technical skills, but those emotional and psychological skills as well.
Our companies are two of the companies that I primarily focus on are on distribution and delivery. One is Rise. It's a statewide distributor, and it's also in a couple other states. And then on the delivery side, we're Hometown Heart. And if you've ever ordered from a company called Ease or seen the Cali Chill billboards, that's us. We do about 1,500 deliveries a day in San Francisco and Oakland. I guess what I do is really play weed chess. There's anything that's impossible. I spent my whole life basically going around the box and all the rules. And as soon as we were given a framework to work within the box, I put all that creative energy on connecting dots and making it work within the box. And so I would say that the biggest thing I really do is find people that are feeling my deficiencies and more talented at things than I am, find the direction and motivate them to go in that direction. And so, you know, hack our way through every challenge, because I'd say if anything we've done more is fail at everything and just get back up. So that's it.
So my companies were actually existent prior to legalization happening. California rolls, make pre-roll, make popcorn, just infused products, and then we self-distributed those products. And since legalization, it took about a year for me to get these licenses. It was a really tough year. So I would say that grit is a necessity in this industry. If you have no grit, you're not going to make it. I mean, you're going to get punched in the face 1,000 times. You have to continue to get up and keep it moving. And my background, some hard skills that I have, I'm a marketing and branding. I've been in print since 1999. And I was also in the military. I went through officer training. I was in the United States Coast Guard. So that has allowed me to deal with all types of people and situations. I'm applying for 2 dispensaries here in San Francisco, hoping to add a 3rd here really soon. And my team is mainly men with a couple of women. And leading a team of men, and me being the youngest out of all of these men and the one with the least amount of capital, you know, has proven to be an interesting challenge that I conquer every day. You know, I constantly am having to check folks, you know, not necessarily in a disrespectful way, but people often want to discredit the black woman, you know, constantly. So I constantly have to show these folks why I'm in charge. And so just being very confident and sure of yourself is also a huge skill to have. Like, don't let these people bullshit you. You know, I dropped out of college. I went to college for a few years. I wanted to get out and make some money. So I left college and I got out and I made some money and I built up my skills. And a lot of people try to discredit me because I didn't finish school. Well, I'm just not very good at following your directions, you know, the direction of this framework. But that doesn't make me any less or not as smart as my counterparts. So just being very sure of yourself, being very confident, don't take no shit, and have some grit. And those are really the skills that are going to be necessary to make it in this industry.
Nina, what was the first question? Mm-hmm. Got it. Right. I sing. That's what I do. You know, I have 2 business partners. My brother has owned a house on 82nd and Dowling for a while, and so we get to be equity. It was difficult to prove my own equity, and so my business partner makes topicals, and we're getting into teas, and I'm super juiced about that, and tinctures. And so that's what we make. We're Fos Fan Mi, which means roots and wings. And we're operating under the name Artisan for art and medicine. And so my work really is to make us visible as we roll out, and to stay politically engaged is more my work. I'm the mouthpiece. And the details I stay abreast of. And I'm really excited about what you guys have created, because it was designed for people like me who have a brain like this. Because if you're new to this and you've had to sit down and try and read all those regulations or understand all the websites and so forth, this has cut. This has added 5 years to your life and cut 6 months worth of work, at least just in reading. And so, yeah, a round of applause for doing that, for sure. Yeah, so my hard skills, I think I'm an orator, so that's useful. And my soft skills that I've had to learn is, don't cut folks off because they're trying to use you. Yes, they're trying to use you. It's business. They are. They're trying to use you, and they're going to try and take as much as they possibly can because we live in a capitalist society. And so while you can be offended by that, or you can know what they don't know, which is that we can have a more just system. And so we make moves from that space, and we, as business owners, make decisions that will be more equitable for our employees and our communities as well again. And so, yeah, I've just learned to not send that email right then. You know, I've learned to be like, maybe you should go outside for a smoke break before you cuss your incubator out. Just happened several times. So, yeah, that's my soft skill.
We were one of the first micro licenses in the state last year. That was named Around My Way. And like everyone up here said, it was just premature. Learned that we bit off more than we can chew. And so ultimately later in the year, we decided to kind of just let that go and focus more on delivery. So currently I have a delivery in Oakland that's non-operational and one in Sacramento. Most important thing I think I do is I'm a father and I'm a husband. So all of this comes secondary. And then I never thought I would say this, but I guess I'm an activist. And so I dedicate a lot of time to kind of seeing this ball constantly move down the field. Soft and hard skills. I would think the hardest skill would be is, like my man said, I'm from Oakland, born and raised in drug culture. Both parents drug addicts. Didn't get to finish high school. Took a GED. Went to jail in my earlier, not prison, but went to jail in my earlier life, and so really had to learn how to grow up. And so ultimately, became a family man. Opened a real estate business, and so I bring a unique perspective that I was able to bring a highly regulated industry over into this industry. So a lot of it I understood. But one of the hardest skills that I would say I had to actually learn was to back away from my upbringing and raising, and actually being on this panel. These type of things were one of the skills that I had to pick up, was actually getting in front of things. We're raised to kind of keep your mouth closed, do your dirt by yourself, and keep your head down. So stepping out and networking and mingling and talking about this, which is something we were raised not to, has been very, very complicated. The soft skills, really learning how to pivot, because like my man said, literally the regs have changed 4 times last year alone. And so planting your feet in the ground and being, static is not, conducive for anyone. You have to be able to pivot at the drop of a dime, especially being self-funded, because the majority of us will have a hard time, if ever, finding financing, right? And so ultimately being self-funded, you have to learn how to work smarter instead of harder. You have to be able to pivot at the drop of a dime. If something doesn't work, you have to either be able to change it or abandon it and be able to sustain that blow. And so that's been a very, very complicated thing to kind of wrap your head around. There's highs and lows. You're going to feel great at times. You're going to feel horrible at times. Everyone in this room who decides to get into this industry will be bipolar from this day moving forward. Period. You will spend more time reading the law than if you were in prison if you actually want to succeed. And so these are things you have to wrap your head around. But you also have to realize, like Jennifer said, you will be used. The most important part is it mutually beneficial? That's business. No one does anything for anyone in business without the intent of benefiting. And so ultimately, it's not so much of them using you, but can you use them in that exchange? And if the answer is yes, push forward. Don't send that email. Just don't do it, because ultimately it will take us. Many of us, everyone in this room, regardless to what you look like, you're here for a reason. It will take every one of you months, if not years, to build these relationships. It will take you minutes to tear them down. Yep. So keep that in mind with everything you do. I feel constantly as if I'm looked at as they're waiting for me to be the angry black man. I don't give it to them, you know, at all, under any circumstance. Even when I gotta go bad, I go bad a different way, you know, because ultimately if you give them what they're looking for, they will make sure that is solidified, it is set in stone, and everyone knows. And so ultimately, pivoting is the biggest thing that you will have to do for the next 5 years. So.
So I started with a micro business, which is manufacturing, distribution, and delivery. I was pre-registered in San Francisco, so I was a mutual benefit corporation, so Prop 215. And when we started, our goal was to really, understand consumers, understand the amazing brands. I never wanted to be a brand because there's so many amazing brands as is that need to be shown and need to be showcased. So we started that way, and then when I realized that a lot of these brands were having hard time getting licensed, we started going to all the different associations. We really wanted to understand how to help build the law in a way where everyone who fought for it could participate in it. And a lot of it took like advocacy, which is something I was not as good at before. And so now I have an incubator called CannaWorks, and our goal is to help people get licensed easily, not to have to go through this big battle. We were grassroots as well. My husband and I built this business with one kid with a learning difference and another one that's, a diva. But, you have to want it, and you have to believe in it, because a lot of people, there's an advantage here. If you're coming in because you want to try to make something, you're going to fall back in a second. You have to really want to be here for all the good it can do. So for me, I've been lucky enough to be able to work with amazing people. And so for me, one of my hardest turns was, my husband lost his job. I'm building this business. I'm not operating. So it's been 4 years of non-operations for me, because I've been working through the process of getting licensing, going to the state, and making sure that we're all reading the regulations. Reading the law is going to be your best friend, period. It's the easiest way for you to understand how your business needs to be put together. And also, in general, there's so many different opportunities, not even to have to start your business. People should be able to enter this market on any level, whether they want to work somewhere, whether they want to bring their expertise to it. There's a lot of need for all of it. And I think that's undersaid, that you don't have to be able to know all of this, although they would give you a really good starting point. Seriously, like 10 years of information. But I guess, so the hard part was having to keep going and keep fighting when, there's kids to feed, and, you're looking for a job, and you're trying to help build this the right way. And you don't want to give up, because you know that this is something you want to do for the rest of your life. So that's kind of my hard, and the soft is that I've never made so many friends. This industry changed my life. I've always consumed, but to meet so many other people that want to build this the right way, we're changing this industry as a guidance for all other industries. Social entrepreneurship is a way of life. Cannabis comes from compassion. You believe in this, you understand this plant, all of us will group together just because of the same beliefs, and we will help it grow bigger. So that's
So we have a new addition to the panel. We've heard from every sector of the supply chain, aside from lab testing. And lab testing is such a huge question mark for a lot of people, because the standards just kind of they're constantly changing. There's different types of testing, different types of what people are finding are really important. One of the things that came down in testing is they were finding some of the edibles weren't passing the pesticides test, but it wasn't because the cannabis wasn't clean, it was because the strawberries had pesticides on it. Or So there's like all these nuances in having to understand the role of labs, and we're really happy to have somebody here for that. Introduce yourself, your name, the name of your company, what is it you do, and then the hard skills and the soft skills that is necessary to be in that arena.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Marco Traiani, and I run Digamma Consulting with my partner Savino, who couldn't make it today. And what we do is we are not a licensed lab, we consult for licensed labs. So basically we work with laboratories that are trying to do cannabis testing in a licensed way with the BCC, but they are deficient for some reason in an audit. They don't know how to set the pesticide method up correctly or the heavy metals, and so they bring us in to make sure the testing is accurate and the results are reliable and held to the same standard you get when your food is tested for pesticides or anything else. And then the next question was hard and soft skills. I guess the hard skills would be really the science and the math and all that. Took some. Oh, sorry. The hard skills would be the science and the math and the studying for many years to understand the chemistry. And that I think is part of the reason that there's kind of a supply chain squeeze at the laboratories. I think there's a shortage of people with those kind of skills in this industry right now. There's a lot of them in other industries. There's plenty of people testing our food, but right now in cannabis, there's kind of a shortfall of people who are scientifically literate and kind of have a background in this kind of work. And so the soft skills would definitely be very similar to what I heard people on this panel talking about, are learning the ways of business and learning how to be patient and learning how to deal with anxiety, learning how to build things slowly that are very important to you, learning how to let things go. You put all these irons in the fire, 15, 20 of them, you don't know which one's going to save your butt, but one of them is, and the others don't. But you can't get frustrated when you feel like it's going the wrong way. You got to learn that like really intense patience. And I feel like until I started my own business, when I was just working in a lab, I did not have these skills at all. I went in 9 to 5 and I focused on my thing. And yeah, it's been years of I'm still learning in that direction. And it's just the human element is always there.
So we've heard, as an entrepreneur, what it takes to have to still stay in the game, right? What skills. Now, all of you guys are either operational or close to operational. What are you looking for in bringing on people to your team?
Bringing on people to my team, the first thing that I believe is important is communication skills. It's very important, this being the type of industry it is, with as many pitfalls, ups and downs you go through, highs and lows. Communication is key. You need to be able to communicate with your team. So I'd say that's like the first thing that I look for when I'm looking for a new potential employee. The training, the education, there's a lot of things that can be learned, but the right attitude, that'll definitely get you in the door, even if you're not the most knowledgeable. So yeah, I would definitely say keeping a positive attitude and being able to communicate your thoughts and feelings. Even if it might be wrong, or it might, you might think you sound funny, it's definitely better if you get it out and let people know where you're coming from and where you're trying to go. And just open your mouth.
I would say that looking for new people on the team, because of the nature of our business, there's kind of two categories for the laboratory stuff. For like scientists we bring into the lab, it's almost like an audition or like a guitar tryout. It's like there's like a hard skill you've developed, and we kind of want to see it in action. And that's kind of like almost like a tryout. You got to show your skills, I guess. With people who are on the business side, we take a completely opposite approach. With business, a lot of it's networking, but not just networking like socially, like between one human being and another. There's also networks in your brain that people see things from a different pattern than you, and they have ways of connecting with their community or the industry or the market in a way that you're missing. And so that kind of like different perspective and bringing that different thing to the table, and because it's not coordinated, like the analogy of a guitar tryout for the science lab, it's like a band. Everyone's got to be on cue or it doesn't work. But with the business side, you can afford to be a lot more open-minded and reach out to very different perspectives.